Welcome back to the podcast before the first cast. This is your host, Calvin Herndon. This week on this episode, it's just me. It's We're gonna sit down and we're gonna talk a little fall fishing. Um, Today we're gonna jump into the three most common mistakes when you're fishing in the fall. If you've been keeping up on their newsletter, you've been seeing a common theme of fall fishing. There's so many ways you can catch bass in the fall. You can catch them deep, you can catch them shallow, and everywhere in between. Unfortunately, you'll find yourself as an angler sometimes having a tough time in the fall. Um, whether that be you just can't find a pattern, or maybe you're fishing too fast and need to slow down. So I'm going to give you some common mistakes and some things that we can, or you can adjust on the water to make your day go from maybe zeroing to having the best 5 days of your life. So let's jump in. So the first mistake I see is it when you're on a body of water, you fish history. And I know people are gonna kind of maybe disagree or agree with me on this. It Most people will think, well, how is this a mistake? I've fished here before, I've caught fish. But the fall time is all about change. Fish may not be where you caught them last fall. They may be maybe 10 yards away from where you caught them last fall, or they could be miles away from you where you caught them last fall. Um, the bite changes. It can be places you're not even going to look at. Um, you know, Chasing baby fish with forward facing sonar. Um, and the bigger fish are up shallow, dredging mud. Um, in the fall, you really have to be able to change. You have to be able to adapt. For example, you go up shallow. Say you're a power fisherman, love to fish shallow. You're throwing that top water, you're throwing that shallow running crankbait, you're throwing a jig, just not happening. In your mindset, well, I'm not going to catch them today. Well, I want you to get out of that mindset. I want you to have the mindset of, okay, so shallow is not working. So let's move out a little deeper. And I'm not talking deep as in like, let's go throw, you know, go to a point in 60 feet of water and drop shot. I'm saying it could be just move out a couple feet and throw to the bank and drag it back. They may be in that 8 to 10 or 8 to 12 foot of water. Um, and the total opposite, you're out deep, you're like, oh, I'm going to catch them deep. And it's just not happening. So I want you to have the mindset of let's let's jump and go a little bit shallower. Maybe they're not in that 30-foot range. Maybe they're in that 8 to 12, or maybe they're shallower than that. And we'll get into that a little later, of how shallow is too shallow. Um, let's jump into the second mistake I've seen, and we're jumping into it now. How shallow is too shallow? Believe it or not, in the fall, bass can go super shallow in the fall. I'm talking like inches of water. Um, you were probably unaware of this because most people, don't throw right up on the bank or in that inches of water because they're like, oh, no fish is going to hang out there. Um, Unfortunately, you're going to miss that bite completely. Bass are notorious for pushing up bait into 6 to 8 inches of water this time of year. It can be really easy for anglers to pull up in their favorite cove on their lake and completely miss the juice because they're too far off the bank. Um, so next time you are fishing, in the fall, and you're like, I'm not gonna throw my bait there because it's too shallow. No, I encourage you, throw up there in that shallow stuff. You may not think something's there, but there's going to be some fish there because they like to get dirt shallow. They like to, you know, corral those bait fish real shallow up against the bank, and they love to just ambush bait in shallow, very, very shallow water. Um, third, the third mistake I've seen when throwing the correct bait this time, or is throwing the correct bait this time of year. Fall time is where bass want to feed. They're going to want bigger meals. The fall is a perfect time to throw your bigger baits. I can't tell you how many times where I've been out in the fall and I'm like, oh, it's gonna be tough because the day's like bluebird skies, barometric pressure's not there. We got no wind, and you'll throw a big old glide bait, and the bass will come eat it. I can remember in the fall time last year, we were fishing the bass cast tournament, and my partner threw out a Huddleston trout color, rainbow trout color. Huddleston was reeling it back to the boat. And believe it or not, I did not think Huddleston's work in the fall. You wouldn't think it would. Um, but he caught probably, it was an 8 pound, 9 ounce bass, which actually won big bass for the day in the tournament. But that bass inhaled it, and he probably was in, I'd say, that 0 to 5 range when he hit it. So don't be scared of the bigger baits in the fall. Bass love a bigger meal. So if you can get that bait, in their face and they really are hungry and want a meal, they're gonna reaction strike it and give it the time of day. Um, in the wintertime you're gonna downsize baits, but downsizing also works in the fall. Because there is a lot of bait fish that are smaller in profile. Um, if it was me, I'm gonna throw a big bait this time of year just to catch an absolute giant. Because the giants want big food, big bait. Um, they're predatorial fish. They attack anything that looks like a healthy meal for them. So I really hope this article helps a lot of you guys. I know I struggle in the fall, and I'm always looking for ways to get better and ways to improve on my fishing. And I think over the years, I've found out what mistakes that I have found myself doing, whether it be, you know, not throwing the right bait at the right time, throwing something small that the fish just don't want, or not fishing shallow enough. Um, and I think that's the biggest one I found out what for me is not fishing shallow enough, because I'm all about, oh, these fish are not in this shallow water. Like, this is not where they should be. This is not what they should be doing this time of year. And I'm really bad, and my partner are really bad about fishing history. We'll go to a place where we caught them before, and we're like, oh, we're just gonna absolutely clean house, but it doesn't happen, and that's frustrating. It could, I'm sure, it frustrates any bass fisherman when it comes to why are they not here? They were here this time last year. They're here a couple days ago, but they're not here now. So in the fall time, I encourage you just to scrap everything history wise that you have. Fish new water, because you never know. You might run into that 8, 9 pound bass of your life. And it's all about change. Just remember that fall fishing is all about change. If you're not willing to change, you're not really going to be successful in the fall. It's about getting out of your comfort zone, fishing things you don't normally fish, um, and just try new things, try new techniques, try new strategies, mindsets. And always, when you're fishing, have a positive mindset, positive mental attitude. Gerald Swindle says it best: positive mental attitude when you're fishing, your day is going to go a whole lot better. And that's kind of what I have to remind myself as well, is really just keeping that positive mindset that, we're going to catch them. It's the matter of when and not where. But I hope this podcast helps you guys who love to fish in the fall. If you like this kind of stuff, please subscribe, please like, please, you know, shoot, you know, shoot it out to other people that may be helpful for. Um, Follow the basscast.com. Follow this podcast if you like the content that we have going. And we will catch you on the next one. Until next week, guys, from your host, Calvin, we appreciate it. And thank you for listening and watching before the first cast. And we'll catch you on the next one. Later.